Hello, Your Excellency. How are you today? It's the Morning Mindset with Razak. I hope you enjoyed the last episode. If yes, then hit on the subscribe button, like this video about retire rich. I'm sure you'll be imagining, when should I start retirement? They've scammed us a lot. I mean, when we were growing up, what they told us is retirement is meant for the old. But hold on, I am not going to be talking about this alone. I have a guest in the house. I'm talking about no one but Dr. Olayiwola Oladapo. Welcome. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much, Rasak.
It's great to bring you on this podcast.
Thank you.
I think what led to this, first and foremost, I think it would be good I tell you guys, I mean, as you're watching me right now, once upon a time, about some weeks ago, I was on LinkedIn and I saw a post by Dr. Olayiwola. It was about a training he was facilitating for an organization. And in that post, you talked about the fact that they wanted you to train people just entering, entry-level staff in an organization. And that caught my attention, like, entry-level staff? Retirement? Let's start a conversation, doctor. When should people start their retirement?
Thank you very much, Rasak. I'm excited to speak with us today about when do you start to plan your retirement. The experience you spoke about was a moment of epiphany for me. This was 2002. I worked for a consulting company in Lagos, and one of the biggest national organization in Nigeria in oil and gas actually requested us to submit a proposal to take their new entry employees on retirement planning. And that was a shocker for me. Exactly the way you felt was what we're asking ourselves. Entry point, employees, why would you want to talk to them about retirement? They had a history behind that. In the oil and gas industry, there was some trend around people retiring, and 4, 5, 6 years after they were dead, a lot became bankrupt with all the investment and the monies they made in the industry. And that got me thinking 2002. And that goes to the question you've asked. When do you start planning for retirement? And the first answer to that is before your first job.
Really?
Before your first job.
I'm sure the people at home were like, before my first job? But I'm 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years in job now.
That's when you start to plan. That's why you start to plan.
Let's break it down.
Retirement planning is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes between 30 to 35 years to plan for a great retirement experience.
So how many years will I live after retirement when I'm not even sure of that?
Because people have been found, and with technology, with innovations, with advancement in medicine, people are living into their 90s. We just lost some elder statesmen in Nigeria in their 80s and their 90s. If you take the official age of retirement in Nigeria, which is 60, for most employees or for most employers, by 60 years, you are gone, out of their employment. You still have 20, 30 years to live.
I want to retire at 50, and many of my friends know I have always said this, that I want to stop a 9-to-5 work at 50. I don't joke about it. So I'm saying it out now to put myself in that accountability phrase. So if I am to start, assuming it's a younger me that is watching, that person watching now is younger than I, or maybe he's in my age range, the question they will be asking is, have they made one of the biggest mistakes for planning late? Or it's never too late?
It's said that it's better late than never. Anytime you start, it's still better than not planning. And that's the question around what we're getting to learn now. You're privileged, you're blessed if you get to know the things you know now. We wish we knew some of these things 20, 30 years ago. If you had the opportunity to plan before you started your first job, before you signed on the dotted lines of your first employment, then you have a lot of leverage and advantage, because it takes time to do all the kind of things you need to do to have a great retirement experience. So you need to start thinking about retirement before your boss or your employer does.
Let's break it down. You've once talk about those 4 phases of life
All right.
that people need to think about retirement. What are those 4 phases? I'm sure people watching will fall into different categories. Maybe we will pick each of those 4 phases. Then let's talk about what action. Let's go through it.
All right, thank you very much. The 4 phases speak to the 4 seasons of life. If you live long enough into your 80s and 90s or 70s, you are going to go through these phases. The first phase is what you call, the pre-employment phase of life, before the sun sets, where you are able to prepare yourself for the work phase. You go through education, you go to training, you go to professional development, you go to career development to prepare you for a work career that will last between 25 to 60, 65 years of life. So the first 25 years of your life are the formative years. That is so critical to your very, very wonderful experience retirement planning if you have a great pre-employment phase. And your decisions at that phase would determine what will happen in your work phase.
What kind of decision should I be taking? And what age, what are the kind of people who falls in that age range?
Oh, okay, so we're talking about every young person. You're going to secondary school, you're going to university, you're going to your NYC. Some people are late bloomers, so you probably went to school late, you're going to graduate a little later. Before your first job, everything that falls within that age bracket is when you start to think of how and when you want to retire. So like you said, if you want to retire at 50, that is not a decision you have to take when you start your job. It's a decision you have to take before you started your first job, so that you can also decide what kind of courses do I go and read in the school, what kind of employment do I take in life. Do I want to become an entrepreneur? Do I want to work for myself? Do I want to work for a multinational? Do I want whatever you want to do? Because in the work phase is when you actually will be doing 2 things at the same time. So going back to the 4 phases, the second phase is your work phase. And the third phase is where you prepare for retirement. Incidentally, those phases are, they run concurrently. It's still the same bracket.
Work phase,
and
retirement.
And retirement planning phase.
Is there a kind of age range for people in that space?
25 to 60 years.
Those are the work.
You start your work, you finish it. That is also the period where you start to plan for the phase after work. And that's why it becomes a challenge, because you are trying to build a career, you are trying to build yourself, you are trying to run the rat races of life, you are trying to get ahead of others, you are trying to make the best use of the opportunities that come your way. But that is also the period when you need to start to think about what happens after I stop working. Because, whether it's by extant laws of the land that says that you retire at a certain age, or by the policies of the organization that says this is when you're going to leave, whether you own the business or not, or whether it's life, because life actually can retire you. Someone once said that if you don't leave work, work will leave you one day.
I remember you talking about that. According to this thing that you're saying, there are 3 types of retirement that people do kind of face.
Absolutely. So when you talk about retirement, it could be a voluntary retirement, and that's what you're talking about. You want to retire at a certain age. You decide, I'm not going to wait till when government tells me to go or when my employer tells me to go. I pick an age and then I retire. The second one is when it is enforced on you. Some people don't want to retire, but for medical reasons, for other reasons that will not allow them to be able to work, they were forced. And then there is a legal requirement for retirement. So if you work in certain environment, it doesn't matter where you work, oil and gas, public sector, multinational, international development, they tell you this is when your work stops. So those are the 3 different types of retirement you can access. And it's your choice what one you want to pick and when you want to go.
I think you gave an example some time ago in one of your posts around the enforced. I think you're talking about a particular footballer.
Absolutely. So several of them, you can relate to them. Danny Amokachi retired very early in his career. He had a very bad knee injury. And we have seen several people in world football, in sport, who had to retire. They had heart problems, they had to retire. They didn't plan it. Some actually retired before their 30th birthday. The question is, you don't always have it in mind that you are going to retire at the age that the government or your company say you're going to retire, because you could be enforced. It could be an enforced retirement for you. So you must always have a plan. What if I'm not allowed to retire at that maximum age. So what happens? So I'm excited about your decision to say that you want to do it at 50.
Okay, now let's hold on. For somebody who is watching now, let's self-assess someone. I've seen your self-assessment questionnaire. Let's roll out some of those questions, like if I need to know if I am retired ready. In fact, you coin a word around retirepreneurship. We'll come to that. Right. And anyone who is watching, if you're watching right now, you don't want to miss that, right? Just hit on the share button, subscribe, like, and comment. I mean, I would like to take your comment in the future on this particular topic. Back to you. What are those questions, Dr. Lai, that some people need to ask themselves if they are retire ready, and how maybe those questions could help them to start thinking in advance for retirement?
Thank you very much. First question is, what kind of retirement do you want? We've spoken about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to be forced to retire, or do you want to choose when you want to retire? And it's also important to decide what quality of retirement experience do you want. There are 3 types of experiences you could have when you retire. The first experience is you could have a great retirement experience. What defines a great retirement experience? You are able to have an experience in retirement that is, equal in terms of the quality of life you experience to what you had when you were working. That's a great one. I'm sorry, I come to that again. A great experience is an experience that is greater than what you had when you were working. So that's a great retirement experience.
Greater than what
you had. So you have a lifestyle, you have a quality of life that you enjoy that is actually better than what you had whilst you were working.
That's one.
That's number one. Strangely, across the world, the statistics tells us only 10% of the global workforce will actually experience that. It's difficult to achieve, but it is doable. And the examples across the world, people who didn't have a great work experience in terms of their lifestyle, in terms of the quality of things they enjoy, but after retirement, they actually hit the button of retiring rich and retiring well, and they got life better for them after retirement. The second one is your good retirement experience. You're able to match and equal the quality of life you had at your employment phase when you were working. So you're able to match it after retirement. So whatever you enjoyed at work, if you had access to a business class flying across the world, you still were able to fly a business class because you were able to match it. The last one is a bad retirement experience. And that's when your life nosedive, when you have to pick a quality of life that is lower than what you had when you were working. 70% of global workforce population are actually sitting in that bracket. A lot of us are actually sleepwalking into that bracket, because whatever our companies and employment give us, a lot of times we cannot provide it for ourselves. So people can't get health insurances after they left work. People can't pay for those wonderful flights that they enjoyed while they were at work. If you were flying business class, you go back to your economy class. For the great one, if you're flying economy class, then after retirement, you're able to enjoy a business class. So you need to decide, what kind of retirement experience do I want to have? That's the first question.
Let me take it for people who are missing that. The great retirement experience, meaning you have a greater experience that is better than when you're working.
Absolutely.
The good retirement experience, meaning that you are able to match up the same experience you have when you're working, when you retire. And the poor retirement experience, meaning that your retirement experience is going to be worse than when you were working. So the question to you now watching is, which of these 3 are you planning for? That's the first question Dr. Lai is asking. And particularly for women, I'm sorry to say, is Omugo your retirement plan? If you don't know what Omugo is, ask your Nigerian friend. Omugo is the act where women, after old age, just jump from one children's house to the other to help them actually take care of their children. Thank you very much, Dr. Lai. And it's the Money Mindset with Razak. I want you to hit the subscribe button, share, like, and comment. But I have one more question for you. I'm sure you have a lot of questions on personal finance. Will you mind to drop it in the comment box? And if you want it anonymous, send it to the email moneymindsetwithrazak@gmail.com. I'm going to be gathering all your questions, and I'm going to respond to them in one of my future episodes. That's one opportunity you have to ask your questions and get direct feedback. It's the Money Mindset with Razak. Hello, Your Excellency.